After last night, I kind of walked away both challenged by the words Jim started us off with, and then just the model that you rolled out. I realized, I was like, man, College Wesleyan's got this partnership thing down. But then I listened to you and realized, man, we still got a lot of work to do. So thank you for your challenging words. Thank you for the way you shared last night. But I was thinking just from Alex last night and where we are today, there's an illustration that I'd like to share. So when I first went down to Mexico City for the first time, saw the hospitality right away. But one of the things that I got to experience was this soup called pozole. And some people have asked me what that means from the shirt today. But it was this odd, different soup that I had never experienced before. And they're handing me a bowl of broth with some meat in it. And they're putting lettuce and radishes and avocados and some peppers. And they're telling me, here, take this. And I'm like, I don't really like soup. But I'm experiencing it. And then I sit down and taste it. And they hand me a tostada with sour cream on it, and we made a joke. I'm like, this is kind of like a Mexican pizza from Taco Bell, but not really. But I experienced this soup, and it was something that was brand new to me. It was something that I'd never had, something that was completely foreign to me. But then I tasted it, and I experienced it, and I realized, like, man, this is something I need in my life. This is something that I want to experience over and over and over again. I've tried to come home and make it here, and it's never as good. And when I thought about the soup pozole and then thought about the partnership that we have with Cindy DeVita, it was something, the first time down there, it was foreign to me, it was different. But I quickly walked away and realized that Cindy DeVita is something that we need in the life of College Wesleyan Church. We need Cindy DeVita to thrive well as a church here. We need to realize, and Alex, you did such a great job. Cindy DeVita has resources that are beyond what we have here. They're different, but they bring something very unique to the table. And as we think about missional partnerships, churches here in the United States need to take time to posture themselves and realize that we need the global church. We have a lot to learn from the church outside of the United States. And while we do have resources here, they have resources too. And they have so much to offer us. The partnership between College Wesleyan and Cindy DeVita actually began before I ever came on staff here. It was started about 2-3 years as a friendship between College Wesleyan and Cindy DeVita. Pastor Jared Osborne, my predecessor, went down with Pastor Steve. And I recently sat down with Pastor Steve Denef, senior pastor here, to kind of talk about those early days and get his take on it. And he shared with me, and hopefully you can explain this better because you were present, I wasn't. Yeah. They approached it very much like a business meeting. You know, Steve walked in, and approach it like we generally do. We posture ourselves as like, you know, let's get down to business. Let's talk. And Steve said, you know, the first day was really rough. They're sitting around a table, I think, in your living room, mm-hmm. And Steve realized after someone pointed out to him that, man, we were losing it. We were trying to address the business side of the relationship, and everybody around the table was kind of, you know, sitting back and crossing their arms, but a guy named Jarvis Ferguson apparently pulled Steve aside and said, Steve, you're approaching this the wrong way. You're approaching this like a formal business meeting, not as a meeting between partners. Steve shared the story that he walked into the church there at Cindy DeVita, and Alex, I want you to share a little bit more about this. But Cindy DeVita, for a long time, didn't have a roof. And each week they'd put up tarps every Sunday. And Steve went in and saw this building with the 4 walls but no roof and said, you know, College Wesleyan can fix that. we can get you guys a roof. And Pastor Alex, in his genius, sorry if that made you uncomfortable saying that, but said, we don't want your resources. We want relationships. And that set the framework for our partnership. And it really has set the framework of how we do outreach here at College Wesleyan. So appreciate that that you did that. And can you share a little about those early stages of the partnership?
Yes. We, since the beginning, I was talking to a brother about the fact that there's really something that needs to happen in your heart when you have a real need. We have been setting tarps in that church for 15 years. Every single Sunday, getting a team of people, setting up the tarps, getting the chairs, putting the sound system. So when you hear that there's the possibility of someone coming alongside you, then for some reason that could become the main thing, right? To solve that specific need, which is a real need. But since God has been working with us about our heart, about the right way of doing things, then what happened is that we just decided that this was not going to be about a project. This was not going to be about a roof. This needs to be about the relationship between churches that can help mutually. So the way that I remember that meeting is that since that was the need, and it's a real need that was on the church, when we got into the table, one of the first things that I said is, okay, guys, I know you are a College Wesleyan church, so what we can do for you, how we can serve you guys, what's the way in which we could serve you. So the roof was not on the table at first, even though it was mentioned. So we tried to shift the conversation to make it more about, okay, what's your church like and what's this church like? So what can we do together? And since the beginning, our idea was to make this partnership mutual and about relationships. And that's when we saw Gerard Osborne and Steve really willing to do that, even though that will take more time. It would be more challenging and maybe more difficult. But I literally remember at one point being at a table with somebody in another country, and there were several people talking about the need of the roof in Mexico. And the family that we were having lunch asked me, okay, what's your main need now? What's your major challenge you have? And everybody, there was someone else from the church was expecting me to say, we need a roof, like right now. And I told him, well, our greatest challenge now is to keep the discipleship process healthy. That's what it's all about. So everybody I felt kicking, wow, man, that was the chance you could ask for the roof, but it's not about the roof. It's about trying to keep the church healthy. And then as we began to see College Wesleyan come along us in that partnership, then on top of that, we could lay maybe some projects and talk about the roof, which is something that we had the privilege of actually seeing last year in 2018, which was great. But the idea here is that I went into the table expecting our church to be as generous as College Wesleyan, to expect Senda de Vida to be committed to prayer as much as College Wesleyan Church. If College Wesleyan Church was going to make a sacrifice, we were not willing to go into the table with our arms crossed. We're going to commit to be as sacrificial, to see that happening as anyone else in the table, to be good stewards of whatever we have, the resources we were talking yesterday, and the resources that are through that partnership were going to come available to us, and to commit to work hard and really clear accountability from day one. So as you see, it's really hard as a pastor to see the need that you have in your church. Every single Sunday, a group of guys, and you can think whenever it rained in church there, it was a mess. So to be able to say not yet to that okay, thank you for your offer, but that's not the right time. We need to wait. We need to get the church to the level in which they will be willing to commit to do their part on getting these things done. So that took time, and College Wesleyan was really kind to wait for us because, yeah, as you described, I don't know how to say this, but they could have that done in like nothing. But it's not about the project and getting, a roof. It's about the partnership growing together.
Yeah. And I remember one of our early conversations, our first time meeting, I went down with Josh Neither, partly so I could have a translator, and Chip. But one of the things that we did that whole time is we just spent 4 or 5 days just getting to know each other and had many conversations. And you brought up the topic of confianza with me, and that was, again, something new to me. And you said having confianza, when you get to that point, you can say no to the other person and that person not be offended. Mm-hmm. And that became something that was like, man, this is redefining what I understand as missions, as partnership. And Alex, there's been numerous times where you said to me, no, it's not good for Santa Vida. And as a pastor here in the United States, I had to realize, like, no, I need to be able to hear that and understand that he's not saying that out of a desire to offend me, but he's just saying this because he cares about his church and he cares about my church, and he needs to be able to speak openly. And so as you think about that, like, can you expand on that idea of like being able to say no and why that's so important?
Yes. Well, maybe that was one example. The help, the financial help that could come really quick before relationship, and to be able to say no, that's important. The other aspect on that is that I try to understand where Senda de Vida is going, and if I have someone partnering with us that will drift that, then I'm losing my vision. I need to be really clear on where we are going, and then to understand where College Wesleyan is going, so that I don't suggest or come with ideas that will drift them away of where we are going. The idea here is that we both as churches have goals, ideas on what we understand God wants us to do. So the partnership, the idea is for help us both to get there in a better way, more efficient, to glorify God, but by accomplishing that mission. So if I come here and pretend to only get out of the relationship things that I need, then where's the benefit for College Wesleyan? So I'm as interested in seeing Senda de Vida fulfill God's will as I'm committed to see College Wesleyan do the same. So if I propose something and then you will tell me, well, that's not the idea. I understand that as coming from, well, it will drift us too much. This is not convenient today, or we can do this later. It's because of the relationship. Actually, it goes back to the same thing, right? Of talking and speaking and planning and getting ideas together to try to see how we as churches, by saying no, we are being faithful to the partnership. So because I have the freedom, that's really great, that's confianza, to have the freedom to say, no, that's not good at this point in the partnership, and knowing that I am not throwing the partnership away because I have that freedom. I don't know if it makes sense, but that's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been numerous times where you and I have had conversations. I'll say this, like, I generally will call Alex up and want to jump right into business. And Alex is always the one who brings it back around. It's like, hey, how's your family going? And so our phone calls, I'm thinking I'm going to be on the phone for 15 minutes. They generally last 2 hours. And Alex apologizes afterwards, but I'm like, no, I needed this. And so grateful for that. But yeah, I think one way, like from our end, where you've been really transparent, really helpful for me, is like I've had ideas about ways that College Wesleyan and Santa Vida could serve together outside of Mexico City. And I've suggested ideas. And Alex has felt the freedom to say to me, not yet. Or, I got to wait until someone in my congregation makes that idea too, so we can come together. So it's not just one church with the idea, but it's both. And so that's been really good. Yeah. And one of the things that in that I've realized is that in this partnership, we have a mission here at College Wesleyan Church to make more and better disciples that transform the community and resource the church. That's our mission. Synod Vita has its own mission, and I have to make sure in this partnership that I never place College Wesleyan's mission above that of Synod Vita's. I have to realize that there's equality here, and that I can't push the agenda of College Wesleyan over that of Synod Vita. And then, I don't know your exact mission statement, but you guys are trying to make Jesus famous throughout Mexico City, Mexico, and the world. And so if there are times where those conflict, I've got to be able to say, even with internal decisions here, I can't make a decision that will harm you. And the same goes for you guys. And it's shown itself over and over and over again. You did tell me that one time not to get the taco tattoo, but I did it anyway, so sorry. But yeah, I mean...
That was a 3-hour conversation.
Yeah, 3-hour conversation. I didn't listen. But, and even when we go down, we go down at least once a year to visit. And Alex, you've been up here numerous times as well. The whole idea of what we do when we go down is it's to build relationships. Josh, I'll share a little bit in a bit about Josh's trip, but I think we do projects with you guys while we're down there. One of the things that Alex and his church do as far as outreach is they do dental clinics. A lot of people here says, when we go to Mexico City, can we build a church? There were so many people who wanted to build the roof for you. And I'm like, we're not going down to build a roof. But we go down and we work alongside, and we get to do the things that, I don't know anything about dentistry. Alex does, but I can wash instruments. I can hang out with kids. And so we're always looking for ways where we can work together, but I don't want to do things for you guys that you guys can do for yourself. And so, why is that important? Why is that idea of, not coming into my church and then doing things for me? Why is that?
Well, I believe it goes back to the fact that you guys approached the partnership by the idea of valuing that we are resourceful in many ways, and you respect the way in which we do that. For example, dental clinics. If you will invite a dentist from the U.S. to do a dental clinic, he will have a heart attack because of the standard we have to do that. It's healthy, it's good, but what I'm trying to say is you will always find ways in which you could do things better, right? But if we respect what we are seeing and the effort and the sacrifice and what people is getting into, then we allow that for that to grow. And it doesn't mean that we know how to do it. We're open to ideas. We're open. We want to learn. We need more resources. We could do this better if we have more people or more dental units. And we're open to that. But the fact that you guys go in and just are open, if we invite you, being a PhD, to brush some saliva and you're willing to do that, that's what gets you confianza, because it's about what we do together. So we have several layers of objectives when we do that. For example, the dental clinics. We have the objective of connecting a teenager from Marion with a teenager from Mexico while that's happening. And at the same time, we are fixing the tooth of children, and we're preaching the gospel to his mother. So you see these different levels, and we want to encourage our own teenagers to speak more English. And at the same time, we're dreaming about pozole in the afternoon, and how the partnership is going to grow through that. So it's not about, okay, we're doing the dental clinic, and then we fixed 35 tooths. It's that, yes, but it's not just about that. It's about what we are going to harvest in the future because of that connection between people.
Yeah. And even talking about those dental clinics, kind of giving an illustration of you guys wanting to constantly give back to College Wesleyan. My daughter went down with me, it's about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And Alex, every time they have a dental clinic, Alex is like, you need to get in the chair. We need to clean your teeth. And I'm super scared of dentists. And so I was like, here's my daughter, clean her teeth. And that's
partnership right there.
We discovered she had a cavity in Mexico City. So it was kind of cool to see. And one of the things that Alex and I constantly have to really focus in on in this partnership is this, and you brought it up last night, is this idea that it can't be a partnership between you and I. And this is the constant challenge. I think this is the hardest obstacle that we've had to face in the partnership, because you and I I speak very little Spanish. I ordered water and you guys were, great job. Agua, por favor. But you and I can communicate, but what we have to navigate is this language between people who speak English and people who speak Spanish. But we found that when we get people together, even those language barriers gets to be broken down. Pastor Alex, he didn't bring this up last night, but they've planted 5 churches out of them, and one of those, the first church plant, is about to plant another church. But one of those church planters, Jose speaks about as much English as I speak Spanish, but we found commonality. We joke, even though we don't know what each other is saying. We just laugh at each other. But there's this really strong relationship that we have, and when we go down in August, one of the things that I've asked Alex is Jose now lives 6 hours away. I'm like, you've got to get me to Jose, because we're friends. And then, the people that have been down there, it's so encouraging for me to hear ways that there's just engagement 1,000 miles away from each other. Do you want to speak into that? I've got an example of that, but
it's because it's about relationships, and a really interesting thing that it's happening is that as we tried for the partnership, it starts with the leaders. It needs to start with the pastor, but it needs to go down as we advance in the partnership to try to get more and more people connected. And I was mentioning to our brother yesterday that it can get messy, because when the both of us are talking, we have the confianza and we can be really clear about things and say no. But as you go down, sometimes those relationships that you're creating now, there are plans beginning to come out. Oh, pastor, we just had a plan, and they're making, trips already in their plans and stuff, which is good, but we still need to get a structure so as not to begin to create harm or problems from those relationships. But it's actually all about relationships. So we have had, for example, a small group here in College Wesleyan, connected via Skype to another group a cell group in Mexico City at the same time. And through translation, some things may be clear, some things may not be clear, but at least we're trying to make those connections. There's people that continue to be in contact, people that continue to be in WhatsApp groups and share about prayer requests and things like that. So that's the idea. Even though we have challenges, we're trying to get the partnership all the way down as much as we can. That's why if you were here on Sunday, when I talked about the projects we had, one of the projects in terms of outreach, prayer, funds, relationships, it's College Wesleyan, because we want to invest in College Wesleyan, and we encourage people to do that. That's the idea.
Yeah. A couple of seeing where our churches are becoming one entity. There's been a couple of moments that have been definitive from my point of view. One, Josh Needler has been to Mexico City probably more than I. His wedding, you guys streamed the wedding, and there was viewing parties in Mexico City to watch the wedding. Yeah. And another moment that I don't get emotional much, but I teared up quite a bit, is when we were down there last August, and you invited all the pastors from the churches that have been planted to be a part of a commissioning service for another pastor. And then you invited Steve and I to take part in that. Yeah. It was just this moment where it's not College Wesleyan, Synod Vita, and all these other church plants. It's now we're together, and that was extremely important to me. And you gave me some notes here. Can you explain? You briefly hit on it last night. The idea of like independence, codependence, and interdependence.
The idea here is, I'm sure we are all aware that in our Western society, we tend towards heavy emphasis on individualism. And we measure success sometimes in terms of independence. So the idea of having to rely on someone else, it's countercultural to the West. But it's tricky here because we know we are not an independent church. We aim to be autonomous, which is different from independent. Mm-hmm. We want to be dependent on God, autonomous in the sense that we are mature enough to be able to enter into an interdependent relationship. Yeah. If you go, let's say, to one side, you can become independent, and my belief is that that's a sinful idea. Yeah. The concept that I am self-reliable, I have everything that I need, that will create independence. And then if you go to the other side, on the opposite, we will become codependent in the sense that I cannot survive if you don't send me your offering. I cannot survive if you're not sending your sustenance, and that will become codependence. But interdependence means that I'm able, depending on God, to become autonomous so I can get into a relationship in which we become interdependent. We need each other. And I really believe that we have things in Mexico City, and I truly believe this. There are things in churches in the hills, in the desert of Africa and Haiti, in the mountains in Mexico, that have things that churches in other countries need. Yeah. And it's not money. It's not good buildings. But those churches have things that other churches need, and these churches have things that this church needs. So my belief is that interdependence is like Paul said it better, right? That we're a body. So in a body, you won't see independence, and you won't see codependence. You will see interdependence between the members of the body. And that's the idea we're trying to teach College Senda de Vida in the partnership with College Wesleyan.
Yeah, and you point out this here in my notes. I mean, Galatians 6, 2 and 3, we're called to carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. And so when I'm carrying, CWC is carrying the burdens of Synod de Vida, and Synod de Vida is then carrying the burdens of College Wesleyan. I mean, we're in act fulfilling what God has called us to do. And just to give you, Alex kind of hinted that we helped. You guys now have a roof, and we got to partner with you guys in that. And but Synod de Vida is very much giving back to College Wesleyan Church. I think it's safe to say that looking at discipleship, when we saw how you guys do discipleship, I mean, that was something that we realized, man, we have a lot to learn from Synod de Vida, and we've begun implementing those things here. The idea of missional partnership, this is not something that we necessarily started at. I think you, in that defining moment of saying, we want your relationships, not your resources, was something that dramatically shifted the way we as a church approach outreach, not just with you guys, but it has impacted all of what we do, even locally here. And I think, Josh mentioned that he was down there just a couple weeks ago. Like many other, or 14 other Wesleyan churches, we have Immigrant Connection, a immigration legal clinic here. And as that's grown, we realize, we're not just called to take care of the legal needs of the immigrants in our community, but we're also called to take care of their spiritual needs. And so Josh Ruiz has been doing a great job at providing that through Spanish-speaking small groups and Spanish worship nights. But we realized, man, Josh could take it to the next level by spending some time with you guys. And so Josh went down just to listen and learn, not only from Pastor Alex, but from others within his church. I mentioned this in an outreach committee meeting that Josh went down to learn from Alex, and Alex's son Pablo kind of pushed back and said, well, Josh can learn from any of us because we all know this process. And so it was encouraging to me. And so that's a way that you guys are sharing your resources with us to make us a better church. And there's countless other ways that you guys have blessed us. And so I think when we think about the partnership, I mean, it seems like our resources are quite different, but sharing them has made both churches better.
Yeah. I believe it's because of that idea of every single culture, people, family has assets, value that God has given them. Can I mention really quick, we just entered a partnership with a group of Nahuatl speakers in the High Sierra of San Luis Potosí in Mexico. And we were privileged as church to provide funds for them to be able to do a workshop on translation for their own language. And it's impressive to see the way that church, that community, even though the financial resources, the material resources are scarce, the poverty it's overwhelming. But when we got into the table, we got there from the idea that you guys have the language. And none of us have that. And we're just providing, this money, it's valuable, but in terms of what we're doing, they were providing the best part on that partnership. So it's just an example of what you're describing. You're describing the value that your churches have. And when you go into a partnership, just let's expect that they already have things of value that they can bring to the table, and it will be mutually beneficial, I'm sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we wanted to convey, not just this discussion, but the rest of the discussions is when we look at partnership, we have to realize that the others have something to offer us, something that's desperately needed on our end. And what we find here in the United States is more often than not, the only thing that we really can offer is funds. I mean, we've offered, I believe, hopefully more than that. But that's where we start, and we're called to be generous with what we have. And then the partnering organization, church, comes into it with that same mentality. We're going to give what we have, and we're going to give generously. But we have to position ourselves really to be receivers from the other. And it means setting aside pride. It's setting aside understanding to that point.
Yeah.
And
can I say something really quick? If you go into remember yesterday we were talking about this vertical relationship. If you go in one aspect into that and you're seeing that that's going to be the case, invite the other part to what are you going to bring into the table? Try to pull things out, because sometimes from our perspective in developing countries, we don't have anything. Help us understand that, yes, we do have, so bring something. What are you going to bring to the table? Even if it's 2 chickens, that's valuable. That's an asset, and we can do something with that. Help us by not assuming, oh, don't worry, you don't need to do anything. We'll take care. No, there's something that can be done. In Mexico, we have a saying, I don't know if you can help me if that's translation, but cuando alguien se cae, decimos, ven para levantarte. Yeah, so he needs to raise up himself so he can come. So, it's like, come closer. It's not, I will go all the way where you are and do everything. It's about, okay, come closer, and so we can work together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and again, I hinted on it yesterday. Not only is this partnership strengthening the 2 churches, but at least on my end, I know that my relationship with Alex, the friendship that we have, I mean, Alex is constantly telling me to just keep pressing on, keep pressing on, keep pressing on. You know, you challenge me as a friend and as a brother to be a better pastor, to be a better husband, better everything. And so if I came in as a pastor from America thinking I'm going to tell this pastor what he needs in his life, I wouldn't be rewarded with the friendship that we have. And so I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Senator DeVita. And Alex didn't really go into examples, but yes, it gets messy. Alex constantly has to rescue me from messes, whether it's in country or while I'm here navigating relationships there. And he's just been someone who has taught me. You remember that one time, first time I was there, I showed up at one of the cell groups, and the little old lady grabs my arm, and she's looking at my tattoo, and she's just like yelling at me, like, "What is this?" Alex came and rescued me from that, so he's constantly keeping me from getting into trouble. So, yeah. So thank you, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Do you guys have questions about partnership? I will tell you, and let me just, before you jump into questions, this partnership that we have was started because we reached out to global partners and said, we want to have a strong, solid relationship. And so global partners played a huge role in connecting us, and I don't want to overlook that. But do you guys have questions for us?
Goals for the next 2, 3, 4 years for this partnership?
We're constantly looking at that. Yeah, we reevaluate that. Alex and I, it's not just Alex and I that are making these. That would be the easy if Alex and I were just sitting together. What we do is when we go down, we sit together. The group that goes down with their, I mean, it's not outreach committee, but there's a missions team.
Yes.
And we strategize together. And so we do have some goals. I mean, one, obviously the number one goal for this partnership is to strengthen relationships. So when we take teams down, we strive to, if we take a team of 12, at least 6 of those team members are people who have already been. So there's this idea of constantly going. We're talking now about the next phase of the building there. But we're also talking about ways that Senator DeVita can continue to invest in immigrant connection and the vitality of College Wesleyan Church. And so, we reevaluate those almost on a yearly basis, but it's never between just us. It's the two churches coming together when we can.
We're dreaming about the time in which we will be able to bring an idea together to go to the unreached or a hard country. We have things that we can put in the table, and you have things that will make that happen. It's just exciting. So we're open to that, guys, if you can think of ideas.
Alex, I wish there were hundreds of Alexes out there in the world, but my
Only one Beau.
Yeah.
So that when we go to a place like Haiti or to Africa, the assumption is that we're not going to find an Alex who will respond the way you will, but it will be, what can you do for us? We have nothing to give. How do we overcome Ensenada?
Well, I think one of the things that Alex just said is we have to go in and say, what are you going to bring to the table? And position ourselves to say, no, you do have something valuable to offer. And then,
it goes in so deep levels, cultural, historical levels, psychological levels, that I actually grew up believing that because I was Mexican, I always need to be like this, and I need to be smart on how I can, in our culture, it's considered to be dumb if you have an opportunity of getting resources and you don't. So it's hard. So there are cultural aspects, historical aspects, and I believe that if we approach partnerships with the idea that, again, they have things of high value and encourage them to bring them up. And it may take time, but I honestly believe that can only be done through our relationship. Because if I go trying to, oh, you have things, bring them on, and the relationship is not there, it will be harmful. But if we connect with the people, and it's kind of help us realize the value we have, because it's real from the culture we are and the perspective we are, it's really hard to notice those valuable things we have. So like this example I was mentioning, we did a hard work in helping our brothers in the Sierra understand the value of their language, because when they go to the city, they are ashamed of speaking their language because of the culture they're looked down. So as believers, we came and said, guys, we are your fans. You have all the language of the ancients, and it's a really valuable thing that you have. And then you begin to see how they begin to value that and value that a little bit more. But I will say it's a process through our relationship to help the ones that are developing understand the value they already have within the context of inequality, that's a reality. That's just a reality that we cannot deny. So that inequality, it makes sense that with my funds I can do 10 times more things than with your funds, but it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. So the idea for me is interdependence. Is not saying it's okay for you to be lazy. It's okay for you to not sacrifice. You don't need faith. No, we need to and I will, as a Mexican, I will encourage you guys to invite us to be bold, to have faith, to sacrifice, to be generous. It's the same thing as everybody else. So I don't know if it's answering the question somehow, but that's an idea. Yeah. I can describe it only as, I didn't want to use yesterday the word, but repentance. Because in my mind, it's sinful to deny what God has given me. He has given me strengths, gifts. I may be poor, but I have Jesus, His Holy Spirit, and that's valuable. And I have culture, history, things. So repentance. But in a lighter way, I will say enlightenment, or realizing through a process in which we lose our building, and then we needed to be meeting on a public park for 2.5 years and then setting up tarps. You get this idea that God is the same. We need to do disciples even if we don't have resources. So it gets you there, right? But it's by God's grace and by having the humbleness or humility to say, yeah, Jesus, you're right. You are right. I'm wrong. I do have things of value. So to be able to try to begin to shift that. But I will say it's a process. Sometimes we need to be confronted firmly, lovingly, to the fact that, man, you have things that you already have valuable that you need to bring in the table. I am not doing everything for you. I don't know. I'm trying to suggest ideas.